over the next 45 minutes, we will be discussing civil society's role in building democratic resilience with a focus on Central and Eastern Europe and Belarus. Over the last 2 days, we've heard a lot about the peace dividend and how we, particularly in Europe, we took peace for granted once and we focused on other things. We neglected investment in defense and security to such an extent that we may have put peace in peril. I wonder if today we can speak of a civil society dividend, a democratic dividend, where we, perhaps for too long, have taken democracy for granted. We stopped investing in civil society with the same risks as with the peace dividend. 20 years ago, when this first summit was held, we assumed that democracy, backed by civil society, was a one-way street. Places that weren't yet democracies were going to become democracies, and those that were democracies were going to remain forever. That hasn't turned out to be the case. Not only do pockets of authoritarianism remain in Europe, but what were once vibrant democracies are being hollowed out. Whereas once we saw opportunities in developments, like technology or social media, now we see them as potential instruments of repression and foreign interference. I don't know why I'm here by myself. I'd like the panelists to come. They're much more interesting about this than I am. Let me introduce them as they arrive, I think in order in which they're arriving. Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya is the head of the United Transitional Cabinet of Belarus, in circumstances that unfortunately we are all very familiar with. Have a seat. Zsuzsanna, Szelényi, as you can tell from the many Zs and Ss in her name, is Hungarian, and she's the director of Democracy Institute Leadership Academy for Central and Eastern Europe. She's a former member of parliament, I think twice, and most importantly, a GMF alumna. And please. And Daniel Twining is the president of the International Republican Institute, and also, most importantly, a former GMFer. Welcome, all of you. Let me start by asking, how much of the difficulties that we have been discussing in this room over the past couple of days, how much of the difficulties that Europe finds itself in today stems from our lack of investment in civil society, in taking democratic processes seriously? Zsuzsanna, can you kick us off?
Well, thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here. I think it was 7 years ago that I was speaking at the Brussels Forum stage as a politician still, which I'm not any longer. And then I had to speak about constantly that look at what's happening in Hungary. It is a problem. It's a problem for Europe. It's a problem for the world. Now the situation is really different because I think it's pretty obvious for everyone. And of course, Hungary has changed a lot. So now I'm not a politician active any longer, and I'm supporting civil society in various ways. But basically what I wanted to say about in every society or every regime which is autocratizing is maintaining civil society. So it's actually not really shrinking. It is existing, but it's deeply divided. It's politicized. Civil society also, just like political party, have to stand somewhere, either pro-regime or anti-regime. There are good civil society and bad civil society. Good civil society are the ones who are not dealing with politics, who are doing social work, taking care of animals, and also the ones that are taking the ideology of the regime. Many GNGOs, government-produced NGOs, are mushrooming. And of course, there are the bad NGOs, which are there to check the government, to look after corruption, human rights organizations. Women are an enemy of an autocratizing regime. We saw it in many other places as well. So that's how it looks like. And because of oftentimes funding comes from government, taking away funding is really easy from the bad civil society organizations, and even they can be blind being foreign-funded organizations. It's, again, a concept which is there all over the world now, because, of course, a lot of NGOs which are checking the regimes, the governments, they are not getting any other funds but from abroad, and then they become a national security threat. So this is where we are now in Hungary. We just had the government submitted a law which requires every civil society organization, independent or whatever news agency, even companies, as national security threat if they use money getting from abroad within the European Union, where money is coming and going everywhere, freely flowing. So that is really a tough time of a regime. It's demonstrating how every autocratizing regime gets to really radicalizing at some point. Of course, when it's getting to be really weak. And this is what is happening now in Hungary, when people are fed up with corruption, when economy goes wrong, and also when there is a viable opposition. So then autocratizing regimes are really in trouble, and civil society is also trouble, but we can of course discuss it, but it's also much, much stronger than before.
Sviatlana, I'd like to turn to you. Zsuzsanna is based in her native country. You are not. You are based in Lithuania, again, for the reasons that we know. How important has civil society been to you, and how important would it have been in the political process that you were involved in? How would things have looked different had we invested more in democracy, in civil society? I guess we'd be calling you Madam President.
It depends how brave you are. Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for having me here today. It's really honor and responsibility to bring Belarusian voice on such world famous forum. I just want to remind you that after stolen elections in 2020, Belarusian regime started a real war against civil society, because civil society always was a backbone of any resistance, any resilience. And since then, at least 1,600 organizations have been liquidated and ruined in the country. It was feminist organizations, it was, I don't know, green organizations like doctors, everything alive was ruined. And I have to say that it was very difficult, but our civil society managed to restore their activity. Yes, in exile, you cannot do anything visible inside the country, but we managed to survive. We managed to strengthen our forces. Even new organizations appear now in exile, like ex-political prisoners organizations or Ukrainian war veterans organizations who are trying to help new groups of people. And I'm really proud of Belarusians that we didn't give up, that we managed to stay united, we managed to build structures and political structures working very closely and coordinating with the civil society. This is like unity is real power of our uprising. And we are so grateful to European Union, to the USA, that all this time you have been supporting Belarusian democratic forces who are defending our common values. And it was very unexpectedly, this American cut of assistance. It was huge hit on Belarusian civil society, especially on media that are countering huge propagandistic machine. It's really crucial and essential work for us. And we somehow have to survive. Of course, we appeal to our European Union partners, to refill this gap, to find solution how to support people. Belarusian civil society is resilient, but resilience is not free. Our journalists, they cannot survive on courage only, or our activists cannot feed their children only with determination transformation. We really need support, we really need assistance, and I encourage the world to think once again that how it's important to protect, not only to protect democracy in your countries, in democratic countries that's in danger now as well, but also to help those who are on the front line of more brutal fight against dictatorship on their lands. Because without assistance, without solidarity, democracy might remain only dream.
Yeah. Daniel, you bring a different perspective, looking at Europe from outside. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are our IRI poll right before the 2020 Belarusian election showed Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya winning it, the Belarusian election, which is why Lukashenko canceled the results, that election, that outcome. There are a couple things to say here, Stanley. One is governments have become too strong and overweening everywhere. We have to believe as free people in limited government, right? Tocqueville wrote about this in the United States in the 1830s, that the genius of America was not its bureaucracy or its politicians, but its civil society. I like to think of great leaders like I'm up on stage with as civic and political entrepreneurs, right? They're not simply activists. People like Sviatlana are prepared to govern. One thing that's very important about civic movements is not that they're just doing NGO advocacy. You have a cabinet, you have a governing council, you are ready to govern. We saw this in Armenia in 2018 in their Velvet Revolution, when civil society essentially helped peacefully change a country's trajectory in the direction of freedom and pro-Western openness. By defeating an authoritarian system. You saw this in Georgia in 2003 in the Rose Revolution, when again peacefully civil society mobilized. But the key to their success was the ability of those leaders to transition into governance. Look, there is a narrative put out there by authoritarians that somehow if we, free people, support people on the front lines of freedom, struggling for their own rights and dignity, somehow that's a weird form of foreign interference. I will tell you, running a democracy institute that was working in 105 countries until these foreign aid cuts, the interference, the meddling, the malign forms of meddling that are happening in the world are happening at the hands of China and Russia. They are sponsoring fake NGOs. I've seen these people on the ground. There are fake Russian election observers that show up in countries like Belarus and Georgia to, quote, legitimize bad election results. There are fake NGOs that have no civic underpinning that hostile foreign authoritarian forces sponsor to counteract real NGOs and real civic networks and associations in these countries. We've got to have our eyes wide open. We've been talking about it here for the last 24 hours. Authoritarians are collaborating as never before. Democrats have to do much more to support each other, including in closed systems where people are fighting for the most basic rights and dignities. And Ronald Reagan said it best for an American audience. When he was president, he said supporting freedom fighters is a form of self-defense. I think we in the West have got to get back to that.
You spoke of the conditions of civic entrepreneurs and new forms of foreign interference. Now, all this costs money, as we heard. All this costs resources. And my sense is, speaking a little bit in these civil society circles, that it's tough. It's tough. The interest in funding this kind of thing is about as high as the interest in funding missile defense systems in Europe 15 years ago. People have other priorities. The US, for reasons we well know, is moving in another direction. Europe doesn't necessarily have the budgets. Do we need to be investing more? Is the money there? Is the core, the core stuff that we need there? I'll start with you.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
It's not. No, but I have to say something. I think this conference, yesterday and today, when we were discussing so much about security and technological revolution and change and fighting China and other dictatorships against global power, there is more responsibility for everyone to take care of democracy than just civil society. So if we expect that the European Union and a couple of philanthropists are the ones who are financing civil society all over Europe and the world, that's just not going to happen.
But who else?
business people should take part in protecting democracy. Big philanthropes who are now, there are a lot of money in the philanthropy, but very tiny part of this is actually going for democracy development because everyone is worried about it's too close to politics. Is it? Yes, because we are under attack. And then also we got yesterday and today from wonderful speakers from business community and also the tech community that technological development is a threat for democracy. The prioritizing security and militarization in the West is also can happen on the price of democracy. New global coalition partners can also be on the price of democracy. For example, the European Union will have to work with Turkey. But, I mean, Turkey is really in, they put in prison the most viable opposition politician in these days. So there is need for a completely new idea of what security means. It's much more than just defense and deterrence and military security and just technology. If we want really a Western liberal free lifestyle to save, then business should take care of that. And I really call them from here to do so, because otherwise we will all fail for all the threats which were just described in the last 2 days.
Is civil society good at supporting each other? I mean, it's one way of getting support is from other parts of civil society, but how have you found working with other like-minded organizations?
Look, as in Belarusian resistance, look, we are very good coordinating among all the organizations. As I said, we are very united. We are working very good to each other. But what I wanted to talk about, in funding democracy or assisting democracy, there are two sides: those who give and those who ask. And we are, as Belarusian Democratic Forces, we now in the position to ask for assistance, help us. And sometimes it's so humiliating, actually, to come to the government, institutions and explain why civil society is important, why it's important to support free media, to prove that, why it's important to support bloggers who have the audience, inside the country, why it's important to support human rights defenders who are taking care of thousands of political prisoners and their families. You just feel like you are asking for something that's important only for you, but democracy is important for all the world, and they just want to send the message to governments and people who might contribute to democracy, helping those people who are on the front line of this fight. It's not charity. You are not giving us money just because of your kindness. It's your investment into your own society, investment into your own security. Because the situation in Belarus, it can influence on the situation of the whole European Union, at least to the whole our region. Because while the regime is there, while it feels impunity, it will constantly create threats to NATO borders with the migration crisis, deployment of nuclear weapon, its different provocations and blackmailing. It will be constant source of threats. But I think you need, reliable partner in the face of Belarus, and investing into democratic forces, investment into democratic civil society. You just weakening the regimes. You are weakening, this feeling of impunity among dictators. And we as civil society, we're supporting each other. We are united by our goal. We want to dismantle the regime, but it's also your moral obligation, I'm appealing to powerful, strong countries, to help those who are in need, because you might be next. We see how dictators now unite and making alliances, as Daniel has said, and they are threatening also the minds of democratic people. It might be very unnoticed. You even will not notice as this propagandistic message will poison your minds, and without supporting democracy, investing into democracy, this process might be very fast.
Yeah, that argument, which is something we've heard for years and has resonated for years, doesn't quite carry as far across the Atlantic as it used to, right?
I think everyone lives on social media and has forgotten their history. We invested in civil society, including behind the Iron Curtain in the 1980s. And what did that produce? A democratic miracle in the 1990s. Now some of our best NATO allies are countries whose civil societies we once supported, right? That is a huge direct gain for Western security, for Western self-interest. We have forgotten the fact, looking back on the development of all of our countries represented in this room, that democracy only happens when there is a balance of power between state and society. Darren Acemoglu and James Robinson have written about this very elegantly in The Narrow Corridor. The story of democratic development is a constant fight between society for its rights and freedoms and a state that wants to impose itself on its citizens. That's true in every country represented in this room, including the United States. Let's get back to investing in that balance. It has become very unbalanced, including in the West. Leaders are too strong. They insert themselves and assert themselves. It's not a left-right issue, in fact. We see it everywhere. Technology enables it. New forms of communications technology enable it. Citizens need to stand up for what we believe in. That doesn't simply mean having great democratic institutions. We actually have very strong democratic institutions in the United States. But all over the world, we need societies, including in very tough places, but also in transitional democracies, to assert themselves against governments who assert overweening power over citizens. The whole point of there's a great Thomas Jefferson quote, which is, a government that is afraid of its citizens will respect their rights and freedoms, right? I'm now ad-libbing because it's not quite the quote. A government where the citizens fear the government is a tyranny, right? A country where citizens fear government is a tyranny. A country where government fears citizens is a democracy, right? We know what we need to do, and it's not doubling down on government.
No. One of the things that has completely changed that equation is technology. So this being a Brussels panel, there's a legal obligation to ask about AI, but I'm going to skirt that a little bit to ask about the technology that people are using a lot already in civil society circles, which is around social media. It's been a great opportunity for civil society, for NGOs, build followings, build visibility. It's also been a threat, right? Because other people on the other side, whether it be repressive leaders, whether it be foreign regimes, also know how to use that technology. How do you assess the opportunities versus threats of modern technology?
So this is a cat and mouse fight. In Hungary, for example, because in the first couple of years of Viktor Orban's system, the government focused on traditional media and media dominance, financial dominance, and propaganda, basically. And the opposition could use wonderfully and civil society, the social media. Well, as soon as money started to go into social media, the situation has dramatically changed, and now the government runs thousands and thousands influencers. They're on their payroll. They are very good in targeting, polling, identifying where their potential voters are, where are the people who are there to be confused, because actually confusion and anxiety is the major problem which social media, abuse of social media is making. And we know from psychology that this is exactly the place where when people lose their guidelines and the moral anchors and objectivity of any kind, there is a place where they can be easily radicalized. So this is now, in these days, is much better used by those states or regimes which have much more money than any kind of opposition. So it is now more in trouble than not.
How has it played out in Belarus? I imagine you're on social media. Are you a TikTok star? Have you found it it has helped galvanize the movement?
I have to say that these social networks, they very much helped us in 2020 because it was a very fast source of information, spreading on information. But now, of course, we see how technologies, it's like two-sided sword, or how it's called, in English, and technologies serve to bad and evil like equally. But if Belarusian democratic forces, I mean, all the freedom supporters use it to unite, to spread honest news, to reach people. So propaganda uses this to split, to divide, to intimidate, to seed lie. So the same instruments serve to different goals. Like, and it's really, challenge for tech companies who hopefully want to serve to the good. It's how to restrict dictators or tyrants, to use networks, to use media, to use technologies, and to give more possibilities to pro-democratic people. The tech companies are even more powerful now than politicians, than civil society. They really can dictate, the rules, and they have to choose the side for sure. What we see in Belarus now, regime is recording, we call it confessional video, when KGB detain people, put them in front of a wall, and people blame themselves that they have done something wrong, I'm so guilty, sorry. And the regime advertising this video, so just to intimidate other people. And simultaneously, we as democratic forces, we cannot advertise video in Belarusian language, because Belarusian language doesn't exist, for example, in YouTube. How it's so. So we really, tech companies have also, to think thoroughly how to help those who protect democracy, how to, those who are fighting against tyranny. It's a difficult challenge, but you are so big minds. Just think about this. Don't think only about profits, that you're earning money, big money from dictators or tyrants, but think how to help and protect what is really valuable for this world.
I'm really worried about the techno-authoritarian digital suite that China not only has developed to control its own society, to repress forms of the most basic civic association and organization. China is building a surveillance state that is unparalleled in modern history to prevent any form of dissent from even emerging, much less coalescing and organizing and challenging the ruling party. China has exported this technology to over 80 countries, including countries in Europe, including countries in the Balkans that want to be part of the European Union. And these exports often are branded as supporting smart cities or helping crack down on crime. But what they really do is totally imbalance the power of governments to surveil and digitally repress society, their citizens. This is a huge challenge for us. Politicians can be very naive in the West, including in Latin America, including in our countries. They can be very naive about the Chinese offer. The Chinese offer could create a condition where a party can rule in perpetuity because it can micro-target its repression of peaceful dissent in ways that make the functioning of democracy inoperable. They literally are perfecting this model in China right now, and they would like to bring it to a neighborhood near you. Yeah. We have got to get much smarter about how we sustain freedom in the digital era. That democracy doesn't work in real life if it also doesn't work online.
Zsuzsanna, you were nodding there. China-Hungary is a complicated story, it's a developing story, and Hungary and repression is a developing story as well. Does that worry you?
Because there is another new law submitted to Parliament a couple of last weeks, which hints that facial recognition tools can be used for demonstrations in Hungary. And of course, this might not only be in the Balkans any longer. So, so maybe because we are now getting to really very far in terms of democracy and civil society, and for many years, my conviction is that it's really a problem if we only speak about civil society independently from the rest of the issues. And actually, it's very nice that in this panel it all comes together, because I think this alliance building and collaboration that oftentimes we speak about in politics and civil society, and solidarity is really something very important to maintain resilience of those people who are in the front line and do their job and take high risk. Oftentimes their life, but minimum their existence is at risk. But collaboration among pro-democracy agents or actors is much more than that. It's really institutional partners. You mentioned state, but obviously state institutions are considered to be the safeguard of checks and balances about autocratizing power. Well, I have to tell you that only for a while, because institutions are also people, and fear-based regimes also threaten people who are running the institutions, judges, public servants, electoral authorities. And if there is no massive civic support behind them, they are failing. Any institutions can be captured. I saw it in Hungary, which was 15 years ago a very decent Central European, stable country on, first on democratization. It was not so weak, but it's easy to capture institutions. It's easy to pressure civic opposition, and it's also very easy to morally undermine political opposition. And these are all happening together. So this is why I am calling for a broader collaboration. Oftentimes these actors are in competition. They also have different roles in society and in a political structure. Obviously, it's difficult to work between political parties and civil society. There is many reasons to, not necessarily trust one another, especially civil society is oftentimes not trusting politicians. Should not be a constant issue, but if we could figure out some kind of minimal standards, including business actors who would also lose their freedom if there is not enough freedom, I think that is a kind of broader elite collaboration is what is necessary. And I think we really have to work for it and find one another. And of course, this is a wonderful stage to do that.
We have about 10, 15 minutes left. I want to see if there are any questions, any reactions in the audience. We had a hand that shot straight up there. Straight up. She's been waiting to ask a question for a while. Do we have microphones? Yeah, there you go. Right there in the fourth row in the middle. If you can identify yourself, etc., etc.
Hello, my name is Natia Zoidze. I'm from Georgia. I'm a GMF Tillman Fellow as well, and I work in civil society. First of all, please do not forget about Georgia, because we've been protesting for up to 200 days now, and under increasingly repressive laws and pressure from the government. I guess as a member of civil society, in this time of diminished funding and increasingly authoritarian state in Georgia, my question is, how can we sustain Georgian civil society, and how can we ensure that it stays on international agenda? Because it's not on the agenda in the Brussels Forum now, as we can see. And I think this is important not only for Georgians, but also internationally, because Russia has been using Georgia as a testing ground for its hybrid warfare for a very long time. So my question is, what can we do to survive this, and how can we ensure that the support is sustained in this time of crisis in the world? Thank you.
I'm going to turn to you for that one, because you've done an incredible job in keeping Belarus in the news. What's the secret sauce?
First of all, we as Belarusian people feel huge sympathy and empathy for Georgian nation. We encourage you to continue fight. Of course, we see kind of Belarusization, of Georgia, and it's pity to see this, because you were like also our star. You were about to be member of the European Union, it's a pity to say this, but we in constant communication with the position of Georgia, and we encourage you, to continue. It's very difficult, to keep high on agenda all the time, and we see how you were all like struggling, for this attention. But encourage you, to stay united, maybe to build some effective structures inside the country, maybe possible outside if repressions will intensify in Belarus or in Georgia, just to be visible. And of course explain to our democratic partners why you are important, because until you are not important, nobody will take care of you. But of course, I wish you strength, and we are together with you.
Can I do 30 seconds on Georgia?
Please.
Our IRI polls before the October election showed 80% of Georgians wanted to join the European Union. Somehow, the party that won the election is an anti-EU party and a pro-Moscow party, right? I was very surprised when, days after that election, the EU ambassador went to meet with the new Prime Minister of Georgia and essentially gave the EU seal of approval to what was not a legitimate and credible election. And I was there, and our observers were all over the country. The EU was there. There were also these fake NGOs observing the election with, representatives from Turkmenistan, because they know quite a lot about democratic elections in countries like Turkmenistan, organized by Moscow. So, look, European friends need to understand Georgian protesters are waving the EU flag as they are getting tear gassed and water hosed and beaten up. They are fighting for the ideals of Europe. They are fighting peacefully for what Europe believes in. And I'm always asking Georgian friends, America cares very much about Georgia. We've been very committed to this country for a long time. How can Europe not be committed to an 80% population that wants to be part of Europe, that is making huge sacrifices and waving that EU flag?
Yeah, you see the EU flag a lot more in Georgia than you do in Brussels sometimes. Well done for putting Georgia on the agenda. I'll take questions, gentlemen in the front here.
Hello, my name is Berat Kamili, and I am a GMF Teen Fellow and a social tech entrepreneur. We see nowadays many governments and countries advancing in AI and technology in cost of civil society funds everywhere. In Germany, States, China, Turkey, everywhere. My question would be how can we really advance ethical and responsible AI and innovation while keeping our civic and human rights? Do you think that this is possible, or do you think that we have to compromise one to another? Thank you.
I did tell you it was compulsory to discuss AI,
yeah.
So I wasn't lying.
Well, I'm really not an expert. I know very little. I'm super interested. I think if this is any way possible, when these technologies are checked, I think it should be tested in various, not only commercial, but maybe political environment. And also the data protection, how it's managed. I mean, I really don't know. But I think if this is a focus on those young generations who are in the forefront of tech development, I think that could be really something serious. You need to partnering with people who are interested in democracy.
Big picture answer to a very good and harder question that I'm going to credit. We have to win. If China wins, there's a scenario where we won't even be able to have this conversation. We have to win. If China dominates AI, they will impose the values of the Chinese Communist Party in the digital space, not just in China, but all over the world. If I were a European regulator or politician, I would spend a lot less time fighting with American technology companies and thinking about the fundamental fact that there is a totalitarian AI model and there is an open AI model, and we should all 100% be on the side of the second.
Sounds like a good question for the 21st Brussels Forum. We have a question back there, the lady in white.
Hi, my name is Barçın İnanç. I'm a journalist from Turkey. Because now it is remembered that Turkey has NATO's second biggest army, it appears that Western governments and European Union tends to ignore the democratic backsliding that has taken a sharp, very dangerous turn in Turkey currently. Thank you for reminding that Turkey's opposition figure remains in prison. But my question to Zsuzsanna is, you have concentrated, I believe, too much on the funds because governments find a way to stop these funds. You know, even if you have business putting money, they could find a way to reverse it. But my question is how the EU capitals should fare with these countries like yours, but like other countries, candidate countries, because in Turkey we have seen the democratic forces have told for years to the European Union to engage with Turkey despite democratic backsliding. So the solution is not always to close the door totally, to disengage totally, and at a time when there should be some kind of a conditioning, then you see doors opening. You see, I have the feeling the EU has been moving from one corner to the other. So I have the feeling that European countries or EU as an institution should endorse a mix of maybe engagement, but also conditionality, sort of a stick and carrot policy. I wonder what you would think about it, and how has been your experience in Hungary? What would you advise? Because sometimes the EU resort to totally closing the door, which is not the solution, and sometimes it just acts as if nothing is going on.
Yeah, very relevant question for Turkey and for the Western Balkans as well, very similar dynamics.
So obviously in the last 10 years, the European 15 years, the EU and European political elite had to figure out how to deal with autocrats among them and in their nearby countries like Turkey. And this took quite a long time, I have to tell you. So I think for many years it was really not taken very seriously. And the good news, however, is that the EU is more than just an institution. It has several bodies, plus it is 27 countries. So it's, there are many more actors than the Commission or the Council. There are European governments, and they can, actually you partly answered your own question, because there should be a mix of, smart and very strategic thinking about how to deal with countries which are allies, because they are needed, because they are there, because they are sitting around the decision-making table, but in many ways not fulfilling some basic criteria. So I think various tools should be used. Obviously, European political elite should be much more courageous. It's a conflict-avoiding culture, what the European Union is representing in these days. I think it should be changed, and it is changing, also because of many threats. The EU should, Europe as a whole, I mean, Europe is more than the EU facing. So I think just basically much more strategic thinking and taking seriously the democracy issue. This is what to be done. Also including all those countries which are part of Europe, which are culturally, and majority of the population are pro-European. So I don't think there are enough good strategists in the European decision-making circles all about this at the moment. It's difficult to do, and certain focus should be managed in order to keep the EU functioning, but it's no question that this is a decisive issue that you raised.
Can I adjust the question for Belarus? Is there coherence in the way the EU, the institutions, and its various national capitals deal with the issue of Belarus and democratization, or are there divisions that weaken the impact that Europe could have?
For these 5 years, we really achieved a lot with democratic countries. We managed to formalize relationship with many institutions, with governments. We had strategic dialogue with the USA, Canada, UK, European Union, with European Parliament. So it means that democratic world perceived us as legitimate representatives of Belarusian people. Lukashenko is illegitimate. We are not dealing with him. We don't send ambassadors to him, but we are working with democratic forces. We are trying to invest into democracy in Belarus in such a way. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this non-orthodox approach, because many things happened really like first time unprecedentedly, but we have so many out-of-box ideas that still like very strange, for democratic world. Like we are working on the project of passports of new Belarus, because Belarusian people are deprived of possibility, to renew their documents in exile, and we soon have hundreds of thousands of stateless people. So it's something new for democratic world, but it's like new vision we have to, And using this opportunity, I just want to thank Sarai a lot for working with us so much, so long, and I hope that we will manage, to continue our cooperation.
Fantastic. We are running at 30 seconds, which means why don't I give each of you maybe 20 seconds each, just to wrap up any thoughts. You will be the final thoughts of the Brussels Forum 2025. No huge pressure, but what are you taking away back to your various homes, thinking about civil society and thinking about everything that's been discussed? I'll be looking at the clock, and you have 20 seconds.
We need to all support people like Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, because their success will do a lot of work for us, right? A Belarus that is democratic and free will suddenly be a great partner and ally, and not a vector for Russian malign influence and repression and tyranny.
So my message is,
I won't deduct the applause from your time.
My message is, if there is no civil society and if there is no independent media, that business people nowhere can get to know what is happening in the world. So it is really of all our issue to save democracy and support those who are in the front line.
Look, I just want to say that I welcome attempts of European Union, our region, to invest into the military power at the moment. But I have to say that we have to invest in people more, because military is useless until there are people who are ready to defend countries and defend values. So people is the core of democracy and the core of any resistance and the core of any fight.
Good.
And that wraps it up. Thank you so much, the three of you. Thank you to the audience, and please join me in thanking our panelists for their time and their insights.